from Burlington.
Speaker, I'm going to be sharing my time with a member from Mississippi Mills. Today I stand here with all of you to remember the life of George Kerr. In Mr. Kerr's own words in his Maiden Day speech, he said, "It's with a feeling of privilege and some pride that I am able, as a new member, to speak for the first time in this Assembly." And we all know what that feels like. To George, it meant the world. He was passionate about it. Mr. Kerr served the residents of Burlington South from 1963 to 1985. It's an era that we will never see again. Mr. Kerr had a tremendous record of accomplishments. These were times when visionary and creative leaders like George Kerr could trailblaze, and trailblaze he did. He was the first ever environmental minister, not only here in Ontario, but in Canada. In addition, he served as Minister of Colleges and University, the Provincial Secretary for Justice, and I have the Bible he swore on when he became the minister that day, and also as Solicitor General. Some may say that George Kerr is best remembered for his Ministry of Environment tenure. I can tell you that his constituents remember George Kerr best for what he did for them, each an individual person in Burlington. George Kerr always had time for his constituents, and there wasn't anything you couldn't talk to him about. George was just a great listener. He was a tremendous advocate for our community. Now, time doesn't allow me to go through the long list of the examples, but I will give you a couple. Mr. Kerr successfully resisted the inclusion of Burlington, as Minister Bradley said, in the formation of Hamilton Wentworth Regional Government. And as great a city as Hamilton is, that accomplishment was a great piece of influence that led to the success that Burlington is today. And in 1975, Mr. Kerr infamously wore that old-fashioned, horizontally striped bathing suit with the shoulder straps and all. And if I remember the picture, I think he may even have had one of those rubber caps on, and he dove into Burlington Bay for a swim. The swim was as a result of a pledge he made, and he was a man of his word. He'd made that pledge 5 years earlier. He said that the bay would be clean enough to swim in 5 years. And although he publicly admitted afterwards that the bay wasn't clean enough to swim in, if you knew George Kerr, you knew he wasn't the type of person to go back on his word. So clean or not, he went in for his swim. Aside from all his accomplishments as an MPP, George was a kind and compassionate man. He and Mim were a loving couple, and they were inseparable. The happy couple had 3 children, whom Mr. Kerr involved in all his campaigns. Campaigning was in George's blood. Just a couple of months before he passed, it was a thrill to have him show up on a cold February morning at one of my by-election rallies in 2007. He then followed me to make visits to long-term care homes and spoke passionately about what he knew government should be. I can still see him slouched in his chair with his ever-present pipe in his mouth, the smoke circling around his head, and his dog nearby. He served with honor and integrity, and it was my great privilege to call George Kerr my MPP, but also my friend.